Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and today I am joined by JP Mason and Kevin Graham to talk about the first game in charge for John Kennedy. Kevin, I'll come to you first of all. Was there any great difference to that performance?
First half was okay. The second half was everything that we done well in the first half. We didn't do in the second. The game became very, very scrappy in the second half, and we basically looked like we ran out of steam. The patterns that we had in the first half, the movement of the ball that we had in the first half disappeared. And it suited Aberdeen. Look, that's the second game in a row against Aberdeen. I never expected them to score against us. If we were playing against a better side, I might have been a bit more worried. But apart from the chance that Callum McGregor had there in the 88th minute, the second half was very, very forgettable. But I think there was enough positive in the first half to say Kennedy, maybe with another week with him, we can maybe start like moving the ball like we done in the first half. Second half was poor. I'll just forget about the second half and move on.
Well, JP, you had spoken about your concerns on Thursday's bulletin in relation to this flicking of the switch, whereby the same personnel all of a sudden can find it within themselves to come out and have this great performance. We didn't quite see that this afternoon, did we?
No, there was no bounce. And in a way, I'm kind of glad about that, because if there had been, I would have been probably fizzing right now. There was no bounce because we were playing with a flyaway. Did you ever call them flyaways? Remember the balls that
they shoot five.
Cheap balls. It was a flyaway. Yep. And the flyaway was burst, so there was no bounce. And you know, how many times in recent weeks have we played well in the first half and then not done anything in the second half? Like that's a theme that's continued, and it doesn't matter who's in the dugout. Somebody put up on Twitter, in the first half, I saw some tweets going, "Oh, looks like there's a bit of camaraderie and the spark's back," and that's people looking for something, as far as I'm concerned. I saw plenty of evidence in first halves under Neil Lennon in recent weeks where we played well and did some good things. It's not that I didn't see any sort of revitalisation of Celtic in that game at all.
We've been talking about it all season, haven't we, really? Spells 30 minutes, sometimes a whole half, sometimes 60 minutes, where we have looked impressive. Kevin, is that something that concerns you for the rest of this season, or are we just going to see this one out? I know that just round the corner we've got Dundee United, and then it's Rangers at Celtic Park. Do you think, Kennedy might just navigate us through these stormy waters to the end of the season and more or less get a run of games together? Because I know that he did speak about that, didn't he, in his conference yesterday, saying that we would win 4 or 5 and then the brakes would come off. Is it going to be any different this time round, do you think?
I don't know really, but we want it to be. We want them to go from now to the end of the season undefeated. And I'm not just talking about drawing games, I'm talking about winning games. But that second half shows that the same failings are there. It's just basically a lack of fitness. There's a lack of fitness to actually continue all the good work we do in first halves. I must admit, in the first half I saw a bit more of a shape about us, a bit more of an energy and a bit more of a intelligent purpose than what we've had under Neil Lennon. But the second half was just dross. It really was. It was just absolute rubbish. And that's something that he's got to work on between now and the end of the season. I mean, I think we had like 69% possession today, and I think how many shots on target did we have? No very many, but that's been a problem all season for us. It's just we get into decent areas, but the final ball's not good enough or quick enough. More likely not quick enough.
Before the game, JP, you were saying you're not buying the fitness argument, the fact that we lack fitness.
I don't know. I can see what Kev's saying, because obviously if you compare the first half to the second half today, then we weren't doing the same as we were doing in the first half. And is that down to because they haven't got the fitness to keep up those levels? I don't know. I don't know if it was maybe just Aberdeen came into it, and Aberdeen could have got a draw today. They had chances. I mean, maybe not like gilt edge, but that cross that we put in that. The cross got put in by, was it Ross McCrory? Mm-hmm. And Brown made like a really good tackle or block that was almost a certain goal. If Brown hadn't been there, you'd expect that guy to finish it. Then there was a chance in the right close to the goal where it just didn't fall right for Considine, I think it was, and Brown was again there to sort of just slightly put him off. So It just 1-0 against Aberdeen a week and a half ago under Neil Lennon, 1-0 against Aberdeen today under John Kennedy. Very similar patterns of, do you remember the first half against Aberdeen a week and a half ago? We played well, and then suddenly Aberdeen came back into it. And I never saw the last 15 minutes of that game, but apparently Aberdeen had chances in that game as well. So it's just kind of like
for like. I mean, Kev, you were speaking about maybe once Kennedy has a wee bit more time with the players, the question might be, well, he's had a couple of seasons with the same players. Are you meaning from putting his own stamp on them?
I think you saw, for me, in the first half, anyway, you saw enough difference between a John Kennedy Celtic and a Neil Lennon Celtic. In the second half, you saw no difference. I'm not just trying to grasp here like a man hanging from a cliff looking for positives, trying to grab onto the end of it. I did actually see a difference in the first half, but the second half there was no difference, and really that just comes down to poor fitness, absolutely poor fitness. If you're John Kennedy, you've now no longer got a manager who doesn't like what you wanted to do. Who Kennedy comes from a set. You saw it today with the sweeper goalkeeper, Brown dropping back, picking the ball up in between the two centre halves, the way that we moved the ball in the first half, the way that we pressed with a bit of a shape, the fact that Kamala actually played up front. And we had a bit of a shape. We pressed in a bit of a shape. We attacked in a bit of a shape. That all went in the second half when the game became really scrappy, and basically we ran out of steam. And that was a problem that Neil Lennon's side had as well. It was ugly. I'm going to agree with that, but only the second half was ugly.
And hopefully they're talking about the action and not this particular broadcast. But Jog VY says that it was ugly. Now, I'm going to run through some of these comments coming in because they're very similar to that. And Sean Fox coming in from YouTube says, same old, nothing has changed since last time. So obviously we played Aberdeen 10 days ago. Mark McMonigal, another second half of fitness and intensity collapsing. Win's a win, but you have to look at the bigger picture. I think it is the intensity, isn't it, that you notice? It's the intensity of the play. Yeah, excuse me, the slick passing play and the movement that can cut open a defence and get them on the back foot. We've never really seen any of that in the second half, and how much of it have we really seen all season? Caplo Mark, an extremely hard watch. You can see we really need a change in direction. And this leads me on to Caplo Mark's second point, where he says the realism is we are more than a summer window away from a rebuild. JP, would you agree with that? Is this something that's going to take some time here when you watch that kind of performance?
100%, yeah. Taking the experience out of our side that's going to come out of the side in the summer, you don't just fit ready-made players back into that. They need to then gain experience playing for Celtic over a number of seasons. So we're not going to see a seasoned Celtic side for a couple of years yet, I don't think. And Starman made a good point in the comments there. Sad day when our defender is man of the match. Why is one of our front three or front four not man of the match today? Why is our centre half man of the match? I mean, people slag Christopher Ayer and you see comments going, a defender that can't defend and all that. Christopher Ayer gets man of the match in a 1-0 home victory against Aberdeen.
See, that's a great point, JP, because there were at least 5 moments in the second half, 3 of them in quick succession, where the ball was being flighted in by Aberdeen. It wasn't set plays, of course, but we've been criticised all season for being unable to defend that type of ball, just a ball being swung in. And on the 5 occasions in question, Ajer was the man who blocked it, headed it, tackled. And I've actually noted down here that for me, before that, I realised he had been made man of the match there, JP, that without him, we would have been looking really ropey at the back, because you take him out that side, you look at the substitutes bench, and it's Duffy. It's Duffy who's in there, all right? Albeit a lone player. We know that there's a long-term injury issue with Julien. Kevin, quickly, as an aside, what is the story with Beaton? Why is he not in? Is he injured as well? I mean, what's the story with Near Beaton at the moment?
I'm not 100% sure if he's injured or not. You would probably think he was injured, because he's not even in the squad. He's not even named in the Matchday squad. I think this season's been poor. It's been horrendous for certain people, and it's been horrendous for us. But I think a lot of people are just jumping on the performance today because of the mood that we're actually in. And I think a lot of people are actually being over-exaggerating how poor we were for the 90 minutes. We were poor for 45 minutes, and I'm going to stick with that.
And that's been an issue all season. I think we've said that so many times in the post-match. We've been sitting sometimes at half-time thinking that things were looking okay. But on the point of Ajer, JP, we spoke about a goalkeeper and the necessity to get a new goalie in the summer. It might well be, as Kevin suggested, that we'll persevere with Barkas. There's a lot of talk around Ajer. Obviously, AC Milan were interested at some stage this season. He's got that stature about him. You kind of think, well, in 5 years' time he could be playing in one of the top leagues in Europe. I don't think we can afford to lose him right now.
No, we can't. And I guess if we have any chance of keeping somebody like Christopher Ajer, it will depend on the structure that we put in place as a management team. It might be 90% out of the door, but if there's a 10% chance that we can keep him based on what we sell to the players as our future vision of Celtic, then that maybe would have an impact on whether or not he would stay. He might not be happy in Glasgow anymore, and if that's the case, then why would you hang around in a city that you don't want to live in anymore? You said 5 years. I think within 3 years he'll be playing at a top side in Europe. I've never claimed to be an expert on anything, but I've watched enough of Celtic over the last 30 years to know that a player is as good as he is can play at a higher level, and it's as clear as day to see that. And somebody said in the comments, we need to build a team around Ajer, and it's just like, well, I don't know if we're going to have Ajer to build a team around.
That's a big question, because you look at what you would build the team around. You've got the old heads like McGregor, like the incoming James Forrest, whenever that might be. Will Scott Brown be there? So you've got that core, and that's fine. But the kind of bright sparks of this season, if you look at Sorrell, Turnbull, Welsh, I would throw in there as well. I think he's shown quite a bit of promise. But in terms of the absolute diamond, I think, Ajer would be part of that. But I fear that he may be one of the departing stars, if you like. I mean, the game-changing players like Ryan Christie or Edouard, who we'll get onto in a second, I think they're definitely going to leave Celtic, But Ajer is the one that you've got to move heaven and earth. But again, Kevin, when you're looking at the way things have kind of materialised this season, Ajer will, I feel, be keen to move on sooner rather than later.
Ajer's done 5 seasons at Celtic Park, and he probably thinks that he's paid his dues and it's time for him to move on. I mean, he's won, will it be 12 trophies, 10 trophies in those 5 years? He's at least got 3 trebles under his belt anyway, so that's at least 9. You look at him that day, those 3 clearances in the box. I mean, if we were in the stadium today, we would have been applauding that. We would have been cheering that. He's only player for me that can look himself in the mirror this season and say, I tried everything. I gave 100% there. he will move on. It just depends on what sort of money that we get from him. Ryan Christie is probably looking to have a good Euros and get a middling to bottom half English Premier League team. There is a rebuild there. The two fullbacks, I thought Laxalt was fine today. John Joe Kenny showed me absolutely nothing. He showed me nothing to say that he's any better than Anthony Ralston. I says that last week as well.
So Anthony Ralston's a £7 million player, Kevin, is that the headline?
If that's what £7 million gets you now, then Jesus, that's real bad. That's Laxalt done okay today, but again, I wouldn't pay the money for him. Moy, I wouldn't pay the money for him.
No chance.
I wouldn't pay the money for him. We'll need another centre half. Two full-backs. There is a rebuild there. It is a definite rebuild there. But then, when you look at, I still think there's a decent basis of a side there. And I reckon if you get a decent coach and to make the team a team rather than a series of individuals, then we're not as far away as what people think.
You know, you've mentioned a couple of the players there that I'll expand on this, Kevin. We're talking about the basis of the team, and Turnbull's come in and got lots of plaudits, and rightly so, I think, JP. He came off again, I think it was 77 minutes today, off he came for Sorrow. I, at that point, had felt that Scott Brown and Callum McGregor had played pretty well. I thought Brown had, he was combative, he was breaking up play. I thought that allowed McGregor to get forward a lot more. McGregor was involved in various attacks. He should have scored, I think, probably, Callum McGregor, where it opened up for him and it just went past the post. We're talking about the rebuild, and a lot of people have said, Brown's finished, he's 36 this summer. I think it would be quite a risk to allow somebody like Brown to go at this stage.
Crazy, absolutely crazy. Whatever your thoughts are on Scott Brown and his age and everything else, if you were to be as flippant, you look at us getting rid of the experience that we got rid of at the start of this season, in Craig Gordon and to a lesser extent Johnny Hayes and Simunovic. I would have liked to have had Simunovic about at this point, at certain points in this season, rather than playing Beaton and Duffy at centre half. I'm not saying Simunovic would have been the answer long term, and maybe that was a regret. And with hindsight, I know that he was always injured, and I know that he had trouble with plastic pitches and stuff like that, but he was a defender. And yes, he had a mistake in him, but he didn't have as many mistakes as Shane Duffy, and certainly not. I can't imagine Simunovic getting into the position that Beaton got in at Ibrox and having to rugby tackle Morelos to the ground. I just don't think he lacks the defensive intelligence like that. So the guy made a point in the comments here, David 138000425. Now, you either say these things and you've got a bit of knowledge about it, or you don't say them. So I'm going to say that he must have knowledge about it. He's saying, prior to AC Milan, it was agreed between Lowell and Maldini Laxalt was part of the agreement. That's a fairly outlandish thing to come out and say, unless you've got some sort of substance to it. So maybe that is true. Because he's on record of talking about Ayer, isn't he? He's actually spoken about him. So
he confirmed that Ayer was a player that they were looking at, that they were interested in. I just think if you're looking at the back line, we've already got a massive issue with the goalie. You look at the back line, your stability in there is Ayer. Because Julien's out injured. We've got three defenders who will be going back to their parent clubs. On that point, Kev, I'm going to just say about John Joe Kenny. I get what you're saying there. I don't think he's, great. I don't think he's great. But there's a few things in the game that he did pretty well today, I felt. I think that the cross that he put in for Klamala deserved a better finish. It deserved a goal, in actual fact. Then there was a right classy bit of defending where he's chested the ball back to Bain as well. These are two things that stood out. I thought he was decent. I mean, nothing to write home about, but he's solid enough. But when it comes to the kind of realms of 15-20 grand a week or £7 or £8 million as a transfer fee, I agree with you. I don't think that's something we need to entertain. But we certainly need a couple of fullbacks in the summer. And Kevin, think back to October. Pittodrie, half-time. Can you remember my immortal words?
Yes.
Neil Lennon has 45 minutes to save his job. And by the way, the flack after that game, Kev, it lasted for some time. There are people out there with my face on their avatar with a big red cross through it. believe it or not, to this day. You know who you are. And anyway, Dykes out, I think's the hashtag. But it didn't happen back then. But at the end of the game, you challenged me, Kev. You asked me, who's going to be the manager of Celtic then? Who would you have? And can you remember what I said?
You said Martinez and Maloney.
I did. Well, a taxi driver's come in. I don't know if you drive taxis, Patrick, but apparently Martinez has been seen in Glasgow. That doesn't surprise me, because is his wife not Glaswegian?
Yes, aye. She is Scottish anyway. I don't know if she's Glaswegian, but she's definitely Scottish.
And I've not actually been on social media that much today because I've been concentrating on the game, but I don't know if there's maybe pictures or that flying around of Martinez. It's something we spoke about at the top of the show in relation to, we've seen another performance there, JP, uninspiring. I mean, I'm not going to be too negative. It was pretty uninspiring against an Aberdeen side who I think have been pretty poor this season. Mm-hmm. I said after the January window that I didn't think Aberdeen were any stronger coming out of the window than going in, and someone disagreed with me. I think it might have been Colin Watt disagreed with that because he felt that Canberra and a few of the other signings might have improved them. I thought Hibs had come out, they had the opportunity to sell a couple of their star players and they kept a hold of them, and I thought Hibs would have finished the season stronger than Aberdeen, and so is the case. I don't think they're going to have a knee-jerk reaction with McInnes. I think they'll keep a hold of Derek McInnes, but we're looking at that game there and you're thinking, you've got a core of players, and most of us agree that there's a good team in there. Many of the Celtic side have been quadruple treble winners, have been part of the 9 in a row. Not all of them have become bad or at the end of their cycle, and we might need a spark. So even though we're all kind of thinking along the lines of director of football, JP, head coach, do you think there's absolutely any possibility one of these big name, these high profile managers making an entrance, Brendan Rodgers style?
I would doubt it. I'd like to think there would be. Certainly, the dreamer in me would want somebody like a Rafa Benitez or a Roberto Martinez, but I mean that is. We're trying to think of a Kev Graham analogy here. That's like trying to go and shop in Waitrose when you've only got enough money for, I don't know, Aldi or something like that. Because I just don't think currently we don't have that sort of money to go and bring in what that would entail, the whole coaching staff, and then, give him the sort of budget that he would want to compete at the level that he would want to compete. I think it's we're going to have to look at a sort of an alternative option. I think I just don't see it happening, and maybe those days are gone. Who knows?
Possibly. In the kind of medium term anyway, after everything that's happened, JP, on a financial level, when you think about what's going to happen, how long is it going to take for the season ticket numbers to get back up to the level we would have expected as well, because everybody in society is suffering in one way or other. Now Edward, I've got a wee note here. Edward, Jerry McCulloch on Celtic TV called that the 21st goal of his season. We've got another, how many games? 7 games to go. He could end up with 25 to 30 goals in what has been a fairly disappointing season. He was frustrating for me today, and I think Estepona boy nails it. He just doesn't release the ball enough. There was a moment near the end of the game where just play it to the left, play it to Sorrell, let Sorrell slot it away, but he tries to take on his man again. How frustrating is he, Kev?
He's really frustrating. He needs to release the ball. It's almost as if he's trying to do it all himself. It's almost as if he knows, I'm the best player in this team, I'm the main man, I didn't trust anybody else, I'm going to need to try and do it myself. And when it comes off, it's utterly beautiful, but when it doesn't, it's really, really frustrating. Again, I think that's down to the lack of structure round about him, especially this season. There's the amount of times where he's had to do things himself, but if he just lays it off, then we're maybe 2-0 up, and it's great when it comes off, but he is a fantastic player and he is going to go on to bigger and better things. But this season, if this is a season where he goes out, he is going to be termed as a disappointment, even though, as you say, he could probably score 25 or 30 goals, which is frightening.
I know, and this season of seasons where he's come in for criticism for large parts of it. Again, you know, he's not had the spark of Griffiths that he had last season, JP. You know, that was a big thing. Griffiths came in the second half of the season. Celtic seem to have been revitalised after that. We've not really had that this season because Griff wasn't fit when we started off, and he's never really got fit. So that partnership has not developed this season. He's not really had a regular partner up front, and that didn't change today. I remember players in the past, and I'm not comparing them in terms of their ability, but Samaras, I used to argue with a lot of folk about Samaras. You know, he frustrated. I thought Samaras was a god. Lenny himself says sometimes he didn't fancy it. He liked the big games. Eddy's got a bit of that about him, eh?
Yeah, he has. And Tony McLaughlin makes the point as well. Why were there no players having a go at Edouard today for his bad decision making and greediness? I mean, you didn't see anybody really sort of scream him down. Not that the camera work is not the best on Celtic TV, so sometimes you don't know what's really going on. But you know, there wasn't anybody having a go at him for, you know, overdoing it with the ball. And I'm still going back to that ruthless comment from, I don't know if it was Sherry McCulloch or Darren O'Day, that said, "Oh, you know, Celtic it was ruthless play from Celtic." I saw hardly any ruthless play from Celtic in that game. I really didn't, and I don't know what game. I think they've obviously got to talk up Celtic because that's what they're paid to do. But at times they were, you know, really scraping the barrel for content, or whatever you want to call it.
You know that. Sorry, Kev.
If you look at Edouard and Dembele, right? Dembele was more, if you want to use that word, ruthless. He would have hit the ball quite a lot because he didn't have the dancing feet that Edouard's got.
Totally, yeah.
But both of them only turned up in certain big games. Both of them had that big game. I'm puffing out my chest here and I'm going for this. This is my. You remember Dembele against Man City in the Champions League? He completely ragdolled them all that night. Any time that he played against Rangers, loved it because he knew it was a big occasion. I think it's just in the French mentality. These guys know that they've got ability and they've got the arrogance to go, well, I can turn up when I really want to turn up. As we're saying, we're talking about Edouard having a bad season and he scored 21 goals.
Yeah.
That just says, if you want any measure his ability, that's it. He's been playing at half kettle all season and he's still scored 21 goals.
Also, a lot of his French comrades as well, they've all kind of fallen by the wayside, either injured or gone away. You know, and Cham's away to Marseille, Julien's injured. I'm sure there was more than that, French players wise, in terms of the first team. Maybe I've invented some in my head or whatever, but you know, he's lost that wee sort of clique that's been around him, so maybe that's affected his game as well. Who knows?
You could even add his international goals if you're looking at his specific individual season, and you know, he'll look at that as being a good season, 25 goals or whatever it might be once you add his French goals on top of that. But Kev, you know, that type of player though, if you think about it, there is a flip side to that. You've got guys who shrink under the circumstances that we're talking about, you know, the big games, and how must it feel for a player to be in the tunnel when you look around to the likes of Dembele or you look around to Edouard, and it's like, you know that you're safe with a guy like that going into the big games because they can turn up. So it must be difficult, you know, if you've got the big game, even against AC Milan where he scored that goal in the first half, Edouard, this season. No one else in the park could have done that, but it must be frustrating because then you're coming back to playing the nitty gritty of the Scottish League, and sometimes they just don't seem up for it. A lot of these games in small parks with plastic pitches and so forth, we all know the limitations of the Scottish game. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Kev, as you say, the showreel will be a good one for him at the end of the season when him and his agent are looking to move on elsewhere. I just wanted another wee mention actually for Stephen Welsh. I think it's important to continually praise this young man because, you know, it wasn't a standout performance today, JP, but I have noticed over the last few games that he's introducing this long range passing that we've been hearing about as well, and he did that pretty effectively today as well. I thought he had a good game.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, he's part of a defence that kept a clean sheet in a professional game, and he's only what age is he? 19, 20, I think, and he's a young guy, and he's come through that test. You know, you can say what you like about it not being strong opposition or whatever. It was, a professional outfit in Aberdeen, with Canberra up front and everything else, and he's come through the game with a clean sheet, and he's part of that. Arguably, yes, Ayer was the more commanded centre-half today and winning all the headers, but, having somebody alongside of you who you can trust makes a big difference to Ayer, I'm sure, and he'll have a far easier game if he's got somebody alongside him that's not going to detonate and just give a goal away, and put us in the rack. Just on Edouard as well, I don't know if you saw this or noticed that I don't use Instagram at the moment, and I haven't really kept on top of players' posts and things like that, but for Lennon leaving, there was a post from Christopher Julian on Twitter that was like, thanks Gaffer, thanks for the memories, and there was 4 nice pictures of him and Lennon over the last couple of years. I think Frimpong put one up as well. Very little else from players. I don't think Scott Brown put anything up. I might be wrong. But Edouard put on his stories, which is these things that 24 hours and they disappear. So it wasn't even like a permanent thank you. Just on his stories, he just put up a picture of him coming off as a substitute and sort of high-fiving Lennon, and he just put, goodbye, Neil. That was it.
But bearing in mind, he was also the guy that says, I don't book, when they were talking about reading books.
Come on. Goodbye, Neil. It's like, goodbye, Neil. You'd be as well not doing it rather than actually putting that up. It just sounded so hollow and limp. It's like, goodbye. See you later, Neil.
Goodbye, Neil. Who was it that said, I had some spaghetti, it was good? Was that Wanyama? On Twitter. There's a famous tweet. It was Wanyama when he was at Spurs. And then, obviously, what they did when they had the goal celebration, the graphic, I think it was something to do with putting spaghetti on a plate. But that was Wanyama's. But yes, I don't know how much you can read into with the social media aspect of it. But, I'm pretty sure there were players within that camp who would have been sad to see Lenny go, and absolutely. But on the flip side, you can't please all the players all the time. Now, again, 2 games against Aberdeen, both at Celtic Park, both 1-0. The first one was under Neil Lennon, the second one was under John Kennedy. We move on to the next game against Dundee United, Kevin Graham, and then before you know it, Rangers will be back at Celtic Park. So hopefully by then, Kennedy has put his stamp on it, like you suggested earlier. One last thing, Mogwai got a #1 album. I couldn't believe, I've seen a lot of people on social media saying, who's Mogwai? JP.
Mogwai are one of the finest bands to come out of Scotland in my lifetime. I first heard them on Steve Lamacq when I was about 17 or 18. He played a white label demo, and he just said, this a band from Motherwell. I don't know too much about them, but this is a new pals to Helicon. And he played this track, and it blew me away. And then it was a few years later I saw them live for the first time, and I've seen them live, countless times since then. Probably one of my favourites being on the hill at Primavera. They played that stage that faces a hill, so you've just got like this natural amphitheatre, and it was absolutely unbelievable. And they're just all really, I've got to know them through the Twilight Sad over the last few years, and they're just all really nice guys, funny as anything, really good patter, and they all consistently release good records. And it just so happens for them that this week they released it at a point where maybe they didn't have the same level. Like everybody was joking in text throughout the week, going, "Oh, wait now, Ariana Grande will come from nowhere and steal the #1," or the Greatest Showman will suddenly start selling copies again. But they held on and they got a #1, and it's pretty amazing. A UK #1 for a Scottish independent band. There's only 2 people that work at Rock Action Records, and I know both of them. It's like, so there you go. It's not huge. And that guy Getz that was up against him, his label hired him a tank for promo. He was driving about London in a tank, and you're just like, I think he's on like Warner Brothers or something like that. And that's what you're up against. You're up against a major label who can do things like that.
And Mogwai pulled out the bag. Fair play. Kev, I saw you at a Mogwai gig a couple of years ago, did I not? Was it?
You did, the Hydro, eh?
Yeah.
The Hydro, aye. I was standing talking to Dave Thomas, who does the sleeves for that, does the artwork, with my friend who does the screen printing for Stirling. They were fantastic that night. The best night I saw them was their 20th anniversary at the Barrowlands. I was there on the Saturday night, and did the Twilight Sat, or was it Man or Moon that supported them on the Saturday? I can't remember. Or was it Loop? Was it Loop?
Oh, Loop.
It was Loop, aye. It was Loop supported them on the Saturday night. And they ended with a song called My Father, My King, which went on for about 20 minutes, and it was that loud. I couldn't believe how loud, and the volume started there, and it started building up. And just when you thought it couldn't get any louder, they stepped on another pedal and it went up another level. And my pants were definitely flapping in the wind in the Barrowlands that night.
I've never seen them in the Barrowland. I've always wanted to see them.
It was deafening, but really, really good. One of my favourite bands ever. One of my favourite bands ever.
We should also mention that they are all Celtic fans as well, and all.
Yes, big Celtic fans.
A Celtic State of Mind, absolutely, JP.
They've got the on their kick drum. They used to have like the Mogwai logo, and it was before the Bruni happened. But in the lettering of Mogwai, they had a wee guy like that with his arms out. So it has nothing to do with Scott Brown. It was just I don't actually know what it was to do with, but it was just by chance. And Martin usually has a Celtic scarf on his drum kit as well, just as I kind of get it up.
Well done, Mogwai.
There is pictures out there where them wearing kits and their early gigs. Anyway, and their early gigs, and also they done a John Peel session the night we played in Seville, and John Peel let them go on later. For them to watch the game. Brilliant. John Peel allowed them to. I don't think they'll tell the story better. Of course they will, because they were bloody there. I wasn't there. I was in the stadium. But they says that Peel allowed them to watch the game.
Nice one.
Before they done it.
Radiohead played the Corn Exchange that same night, because I was gutted that I was missing Radiohead at the Corn Exchange, but going to a European Cup final was a decent substitute, to be fair. But like Radiohead in the Corn Exchange, despite that venue not being that great, I'm sure it was because seeing them in a venue that size at that time, they'd already played like SECC by that point, and they played big venues, so Corn Exchange was like a wee pub gig at that point, I'd imagine.
Corn Exchange was rubbish. You didn't miss much there, probably. You made the better choice going to Seville.
I think they watched it. I think they watched the game. In fact, I know they did, and I was speaking to their tour manager, Mick, about it, and they definitely watched. They were watching the game like offset, so I think they went on and were wanting to know the score like while they were on stage and stuff like that. So they were cheering on Celtic.
Well, I think the conversation has gone down a rabbit hole simply because of the actual level of performance of Celtic today. But just to wrap that up, the gig that you and I were at, Kev, Ride supported Mogwai that night, if I remember correctly. And we do have an interview with Matt Gardner of Ride next week on one of our other shows. So get subscribing.
Wow, really?
Yes, so get subscribing to A State of Mind on the YouTube. Thanks everybody for commenting on YouTube, Twitter and on Facebook. And thank you finally to Kevin Graham, who's keeping his balls in his pants, and JP Mason for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.